It's absolutely amazing that cars with very small production number runs can have such an impact on the automotive world. Cars such as the dealer option Yanko Camaros that were built to tear up drag strips, or the Plymouth Superbird, which took NASCAR by storm. These cars all served a singular purpose in creating an era of speed in the late 1960s and early 70s that many regard as the golden age of muscle cars. But what if I told you that there was another car equally as special, with a mere 57 of them being built, that became an absolutely legendary car in the world of drag racing? Today we're talking all about the gear slamming, tire blazing, 427 powered 1963 Z11 Impala. This big block powered beast was built to go toe to toe with other drag racing legends like the Ford R-Code Galaxies and some of the most vicious Chrysler HEMIs of the day. This is the story of the 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11. Now, to truly understand how savage these Z11 equipped Impalas were, we need to do a quick bit of background on the DNA behind the Z11 itself. The Chevy Impala was first created in 1958 as a family sedan-sized car that had beautiful lines and a style all of its own. Chevrolet also decided to use the Impala as the platform for their newly designed heavy hitter V8, which at the time was the 280 horsepower, 348 cubic inch V8, which is the predecessor to the fourth generation big block Chevy that we all know and love. When the 348 jumped onto the scene, it did so with 250 to even 280 horsepower between the turbo thrust and super turbo thrust 348 engine configurations. For 1958, these were serious powerhouses, but just to clarify, it should be noted that although these are named turbo thrust, there was no turbo at all. These were naturally aspirated, with the biggest difference being a dual two-barrel carburetor setup and a triple two-barrel carb setup. But that power output, which was very good for the time, wouldn't be enough for long. Chevrolet knew that they had to keep pushing the boundaries of performance to stay competitive, which led to an overall ramp up in power that climaxed at 350 horsepower by 1961. These 348 Impalas were now capable of running low 14-second quarter miles at nearly 100 miles an hour, which were fantastic numbers for any production car in the early 60s. Then 1961 rolled around, which brought many new things to the Impala, starting with the SS trim package now being made available. This package mostly featured only different trim, including signature checkered flags throughout the car, but Chevrolet also introduced the famed 409 engine as the upgrade to its little brother, which was the 348. The 409 saw power increases over the 348, as you'd imagine, with the highest output versions of the 409 putting out a ridiculous 425 horsepower. Through 1961 and 1962, the National Hot Rod Association, NHRA, and NASCAR were in full swing across the nation, as the structure began to take shape with new classes and rules formed to make racing that much more competitive and fun to watch. Manufacturers saw this competitiveness as a chance to begin what could best be described as an arms race of sorts. With the 409 from Chevy in 1961, Plymouth hopped into the game with their 413 Max Wedge in their Fury in 1962, and the 421 cubic inch Pontiac Catalinas and 406 big block powered Galaxies from Ford. And it seemed through the entire array of competition, Chevrolet saw firsthand that the 409 powered Impala was a bit underpowered and overweight compared to some of their competition. So Chevrolet set out to build a special order package that had one goal in mind. That is, to make the highest horsepower possible and also stick it in the lightest Impala to tear up racetracks nationwide, which is a very similar path to what Ford did in creating the Thunderbolt, except instead of downsizing to a smaller chassis like Ford did, Chevy would stick with the Impala and do whatever they could to make it competitive, at any cost. As a result, in 1963, Chevrolet released the drag race packaged Z11 option for the Impala, and they didn't hold back on performance. First, they decided to punch out that 409 cubic inch big block even further by making it into a 427 cubic inch stroker motor and boosting the compression ratio to a monstrous 13.5 to 1. It also had a bigger cam and better valve train that was fed by a high-rise two-piece aluminum intake manifold that featured dual Carter carburetors for NHRA racing and a very large single 4-barrel setup meant for NASCAR. These setups were used to feed this new big block and allowed it to make 430 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and an earth-moving 575 foot-pounds of torque on paper. Realistic estimates at the time had these motors pumping out well over 500 horsepower in actual real-world use. But while this new racing 427 fixed the power problem, it didn't solve the weight savings one. So Chevrolet took a knife to the Impala, so to speak, and did just that. They deleted the radio, the sound deadening, the heater, the front sway bar, and they even exchanged a bunch of steel body parts for new lightweight aluminum ones, like the hood and the bumpers. The combined efforts of all of these weight savings techniques was a total curb weight of 3,400 pounds, which means that they were able to remove a whopping 300 pounds from the Impala. And they matched this added power and weight reduction with a Borg-Warner T10 4-speed and a 411 posi rear end that was hooked up to a set of 6.7 by 15 bias ply tires. All of that weight savings and added power did come at a price though, as the Z11 code itself was a $1,240 option. That brought the $2,700 base price of a 63 Impala to well over $4,000, which was the price you had to pay if you wanted to compete at the highest level of racing. And compete it did. The Z11 Impala worked just as advertised, as legendary drag racers like Sox and Martin, Hayden Proffitt, and Grumpy Jenkins ran the Z11 over the next few years in different classes in the NHRA. Legendary NASCAR driver and car builder Smokey Yunick also race prepped multiple Impalas with the 427 motor in them, which dominated at tracks like Daytona in the 1963 race season. The Z11 Impala, run by Grumpy Jenkins and Dave Strickler, showed great results specifically. This car, which was named Old Reliable 4, was a powerhouse on track, and with its big block power, it ran a 1217 at 118 miles an hour, beating Ronnie Sox in another Z11 to win the AFX class at the NHRA Nationals in Indianapolis in 1963. The car would go on to win 90% of its races between 63 and 64, and eventually set an AFX class record of 11:04 at 125 in the quarter mile, which is seriously moving. And with all the crazy numbers behind it in racing history, there were only a mere 57 Z11 Impalas built in 1963, partially due to the large price tag and their desire to keep the production low. But the main issue here was GM's sudden shift from competition in 1963, with its corporate racing ban. It can be debated as to why this actually happened, but it's generally accepted that it was some kind of combination of the legal battle that GM had with the US government and overall increased scrutiny on the large GM umbrella and the entire racing apparatus. And you might be wondering, why would Chevy have even made this car in the first place if they were just going to kill it off? And the answer is that the team in charge of the Z11 and the racing programs weren't aware this was even a problem or even a consideration, and they began production of the 427 and the Z11s themselves in the winter of '62. So the 57 of them were produced before this order, which shocked the teams and shelved their hopes of continuing these high horsepower hot rods for drag racing. The 1963 Z11 Impala is a reminder of a time that led to the true age of muscle cars and drag racing. And while there were only a very small number of these cars made in the day, the Z11 Impala stepped up to be a poster car for young men who loved the thrill of drag racing and went toe-to-toe with some of the biggest and baddest drag cars out there. and performed exceptionally well while doing so, mind you, thus making its mark on the automotive world. And by now, we have covered the Thunderbolt and the Z11 Impala. So let us know if there are any other period drag cars that you would want us to cover in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching another episode of our Rare Cars documentary series. If you enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and also share this video with other enthusiasts. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the Rare Cars YouTube channel and smash that notification bell for more documentary style videos just like this on the world's most interesting cars. Until next time, enthusiasts.